Hey guys, it's Beth, and today I have a scrapbook page process video for you. I decided to work on some of the summer papers out of my All Seasons 3 pack, and I realize I'm kind of jumping around from season to season with some of these projects I'm sharing, but that's kind of the fun of this pack, is I don't have to stick to one season through the whole thing, which kind of helps with the burnout or where I get to the point where I'm just so sick of the paper. So this is actually I love this kind of pack. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but it's actually really fun. I can, whatever season or holiday I feel like working on, that's what I do. So anyway, I have some summer scrapbook pages that I would like to make using some of the summer papers. And so I just thought I would share with you guys my process. So I've got just some summer words, some water, and then the sunshine, and then just some white cardstock. And then I have my pictures that I'm going to use, and they're already matted on cardstock. These are on white, and these I did on black. I have gathered some supplies that I think will go with these papers as well. This is a really old Me and My Big Ideas sticker set, but it had learning to swim. So I thought I'd try that one. Just some words, some splashes from Creative Imaginations, some little ribbon embellishments here, little magnetic clips, some really old Creative Memories stickers, some fun summer sayings, the Echo Park paper fans from the Summer Dreams, Good Day Sunshine chipboard phrases from Echo Park, and then a big 12 by 12 sheet of Bow Bunny Sun-Kissed chipboard elements. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to use or what I'm going to use together. I was just pulling stuff out that I thought would go with these pages, and once I get my pictures on, you can kind of figure out what embellishments I want to use. And then I also did, for one of my pages, I knew I was going to need a title, so I used my silhouette to cut out the word jump in some pink cardstock, and then also did a offset mat behind it in white. So I will be using that. Other than that, hopefully I have everything I need and we can get started. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. I did speed this up a little bit just because I was trying to make it a little more time friendly. I think the real time it took was roughly an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and that includes the time that I took off camera just to cut down my photo mats and to cut out my little jump title for this first layout. So I decided to back my wave paper on some white cardstock and leave that border that I leave on just about all my projects, a little white border, but I wanted this pattern paper isn't very thick, and so I just wanted to use that wave paper as my main background, but I wanted to add a little bit of strength to it, so just backed it on some white cardstock. Here I had cut down some of that word paper, and I'm trying to see if I can find any words that might describe my daughter's last day of swim lessons here, where they are dropping her off the diving board. And so I'm trimming or fussy cutting out some of those words, because I didn't really have any other embellishments that worked really well for this. So I'm also I was looking to see if any of those label stickers worked, but realized I probably need to get my title glued up so it can get drying so that I can get it on my page here shortly. Just using some of my Tombow Mono wet glue to put the letters down on that mat. And then I will let that dry and come back to laying out my page. So typically when I am working on a scrapbook page, I do lay out all the pieces before I officially glue anything down. Just because I fiddle and move things around a lot, so it's just safer for me to lay them out. And then of course on the first thing I try and glue, my ATG gun decides to run out, so I need to refill that real quick. And then we will be back in business. All right, back at it. So I think I only trimmed like a 1/2 inch total off that wave paper. And for some reason I still had a little bit of border left on the bottom there, so I just trimmed that off of my cardstock. So I know this is how I want my photos laid out. I want it to show that progression of her being dropped off the diving board. And so I'm just going to lay them out diagonally across the page, but I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. And then can work on adding some of my embellishments here. Was really wanting to use one of the tags from that label sheet as journaling, but the pink worked really well, but I didn't like the angle on the tag. I wanted something a little bit softer down there just to kind of mirror the softness a little that's up in my title. And I also wanted to try and use some of those splash stickers. And so I decided to put one behind my title just to give my title a little bit more dimension or interest up there. And then realized that that's kind of what I wanted to mimic my journal spot on. But first I want to add some foam squares to the back of my title so it pops up and has a little bit more dimension. I don't use a ton of dimension in my scrapbook pages just because once you get so many pages in an album, it can be pretty bulky. But every once in a while, I do use a little bit of foam. And then sometimes I just totally forget to add dimension. And on that belly flop phrase there was actually part of another letter that had ended up on that strip when I had trimmed it out with my trimmer, so I just decided to fussy cut around both the words. All right, so here I'm going to try and draw an amoeba-like shape to kind of mirror that splash thing at the top, and realize that that's not as wide as I wanted, so I make it a little bit bigger and then realize it looks like the United States. So I am going to fussy cut that out and try and soften up any of the points that I have on there when I'm fussy cutting it out. And then when I put it down, I actually turn it around so that it doesn't look like a really bad version of the United States outline. I've done my journaling and then was trying to figure out how to use that Learning to Swim sticker from the Mombi sticker sheet. So now I'm pretty satisfied with that at the bottom. I was just trying to see, I had looked in my stash and didn't have any enamel dots that kind of matched these colors. And so when I had been looking at that label, or that label tag sheet, sticker sheet there, I realized that pink was perfect. And so I just used one of my tiny hole punches to cut some little circles out. And then I'm going to use those as my enamel dots. And the good thing is they're already adhesive since they came off that sticker sheet. So when I say I like to use things up, I like to use things up. Like, no waste here. But then I really did struggle getting the backing off those little bitty dots. So I did cut a part out of me struggling with those. But okay, so I finished that first layout. Now onto the second layout. This one I'm trying to figure out, I really want to use all three of those pattern papers. The sun, the words, and the waves. So I kind of struggle for a bit trying to figure out how I want to lay those out. I didn't use any sketches for these layouts, which is kind of rare for me, but I knew how I wanted to use my photos already. It was just a matter of trying to figure out like how to embellish it on the first one, and on this one kind of how to incorporate those three patterns. So I decided not to use any sketches, was just going to try and make it work. And so I decided to do a little bit of the sun paper at the top and then that word paper at the bottom. And then I'm going to add kind of like a scalloped border here. Using that wave paper, I'm just fussy cutting one line of waves just to kind of give me that scalloped edge. And then I will put that kind of at the bottom underneath my row of photos there. So it kind of does look like just a scalloped border. So after rearranging my photos, I realized that I kind of want to make that middle one stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and start adhering this one. And I left a little bit of the round part of the sun just so that you could tell that it was a sun with rays of the sun instead of just a bunch of lines coming out in a sunburst pattern. So after I get this on, I realize, oh wait, I have a second of these layouts to do. So you get to see how I do, when I say I do a layout for my album as well as my girls' album, and try to do them as similar as possible just to kind of speed things up. You kind of get to see my process here. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the pieces cut for the second layout as well so that I can get them both laid out before I adhere anything. But do you guys do much fussy cutting? I enjoy fussy cutting to a point. I know there's times that I could probably use scissors or border punches, but here, when it was kind of already had it for me, whenever there's already a scallop in my pattern, I tend to just fussy cut it out just so it matches the pattern paper. So let me know if you would just do a scalloped border punch on, or scissors on there, or if you would take the time to fussy cut it out too. And then remember that I don't like using my adhesive on the scallops because I have to put it on every little individual scallop. But it's all good. So I'm going to get my photos laid out here, trying to line them up as best I can. I didn't bring a ruler over to this desk with me, so I'm trying to line them up based on the waves, which aren't really very even, but I think it's okay. So I'm going to turn it over and press it down so I don't get my hand prints all over my photos even more than I'm already doing here. And then I realized that one photo kind of overlapped the edge a little bit, so I had to fix it. So I had wanted to highlight that middle photo a little bit, and I had already put my photo mat on there, so I couldn't do a bigger photo mat to highlight it. So I decided I wanted to kind of pop it up a little bit and offset it. I didn't have any foam pieces big enough for this, and so I just decided to use some cardstock. It's a color I don't use very often, and I have it in abundance. I think it came in a Hobby Lobby clearance pack. So I just did 2 pieces of the cardstock, cut slightly smaller than my photo, and then glued them together and glued them on the back of my photo, and that popped it up enough to kind of highlight it and make it stand out from the other 2. So now I'm just working on the second version of this page. Getting everything glued down. Kind of had to remind myself where that went, where my wave strip went on the word paper, so I get them fairly close to the same spot. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my pictures. I'm going to use the cardstock to double it up and pop up that middle picture again. Because I kind of like using the cardstock more than the foam or the foam tape, because sometimes I want just a little bit of dimension, but not as much as my foam tape or even the fun foam gives me. So I've actually used that cardstock trick before. It does use extra adhesive, but it also at least helps me. I try to pick colors that I don't use very often, so at least kind of helps me use some of that up. So now I had wanted to use some of my embellishments as my titles on these 2 pages, so I'm just trying to figure out what would work. And ultimately I end up going with some of those little tags from that tag and like journal spot sticker sheet. And I really wanted to use some of those Echo Park embellishments, but the colors on the chipboard ones just didn't quite work with this layout. And then I wanted to do two similar embellishments, like one for each page, and so the rosettes didn't quite work either. There was one rosette that was perfect, but then I was going to have to try and figure out something to do for the other page. So I decided I wanted these labels to have just a little bit more structure because they were pretty thin stickers. So I just put them on some white cardstock and then fussy cut around them just to give them a little bit more strength. I'm going to do that on my other one as well. So they're both similar labels, but they actually have different sayings on them, and they're slightly different shapes. So when I make more than one layout for mine and my girls' albums, I try to make them as similar as possible, but sometimes they are different just because of the embellishments I happen to have. So then I'm trying to figure out where I want to put it. And the one thing I did cut out from this video is there were several times where I just sat there and stared at my pages for a couple minutes at a time. So I did cut that. I left in where I was kind of fiddling with things, trying to figure out where I wanted them, but I did cut out where I'm just sitting there staring, trying to will the creative ideas to come on how to embellish my page. So I ended up deciding to just use some white cardstock for a journal spot down underneath the photos, and brought in my corner chomper that has my angle corners. And so just did the angle, cut angles on all four sides. And then I'm using my orange zig marker just to add a little bit of doodle lines to the edge of that label, just to kind of help it pop out a little bit more. So now I'm doing the same thing for the second page. So whenever I say I make like so many layouts per month, a lot of times I'm making multiples of the same one, so it actually goes fairly quickly. And now is kind of where I started to struggle, trying to figure out what kind of embellishments to use. I realized I'm not very good at clustering. And so I tried to do some small clusters on these layouts. And I really liked those Bourbon chipboard items, but I was trying to stick to a certain color scheme, like with the oranges, the turquoise, and the greens. And there weren't tons that, like, I didn't want to use the bees or the critters or the flowers. So I struggled with how to embellish the rest of the page. So now I'm finally going to adhere everything down. And at least those chipboard pieces are self-adhesive, so I just have to peel off the backing. That's nice. And then I do end up adding my journaling off camera. And see, there you see me fiddling with those little chipboard dots. So I've got my journaling done, and I'm just going to put it down and then do some embellishments down in that corner as well. And I did try to put whatever side I put my title on at the top, I did try to put my journaling kind of on the opposite end of that, just to help pull the eye across. So on this one, the tag for my title actually faces the other direction, so I kind of had to go opposite of what I just did on the last one. So, but everything else follows the same pattern, it's just in a different location. And then we are done. So 3 layouts in about an hour and a half. That's pretty good for me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this process video and seeing how I put my pages together. If you do like these type of videos, give me a thumbs up so that I know to do more of these in the future. But I thank you guys so much for your time today, and I hope you have a crafty rest of your week.